The stars had never seemed so cold to Ambassador James Okonkwo. He stood in the observation deck of the Zathari Council Station, watching the alien warships gather outside. Their hulls gleamed with a strange purple metal that humans had never seen before. Each ship was massive, at least twice the size of Earth's largest vessels. There were hundreds of them, and more arrived every hour. James had been a diplomat for 20 years. He had negotiated trade deals, settled disputes, and once talked down a corporate war that could have killed millions. But this was different. The Zathari were not interested in talking. They had made that very clear. 3 weeks ago, everything had been normal. Humanity was growing, spreading across the stars like seeds carried by the wind. 47 colonies thrived in systems near Earth. People were happy. They built homes, raised families, and dreamed of the future. Then the Zathari arrived. They came without warning to the Proxima Reach, where human colony ships were building a new settlement. The alien vessels surrounded the unarmed ships and sent a message. It was simple and brutal. All human colonies must be abandoned immediately. Humanity had entered Zathari space without permission. This was an unforgivable crime. The punishment would be severe unless humans obeyed. James remembered receiving that message. He had hoped it was a misunderstanding. Surely these aliens would be reasonable. Surely they could talk and find a peaceful solution. The United Earth government sent him to negotiate, believing his skills could prevent war. He was wrong. The first meeting with the Zathari High Council had been a disaster. James entered their grand chamber, a circular room with walls that seemed to pulse with living light. 12 different alien species sat in the council. Some looked like insects, others like reptiles, and a few were so strange that James could not find words to describe them. At the center sat Magistrate Kreltok, the leader of the Zathari military. Kreltok was tall, nearly 3 meters, with 4 arms and skin that shifted colors when he spoke. His eyes were completely black, showing no emotion. When James tried to explain that humans had not known about Zathari territory claims, Kreltok had laughed. The sound was harsh, like metal scraping against metal. "Your ignorance is not our problem," Kreltok said. His voice came through a translator device, making every word sound sharp and angry. "The Zathari Dominion has ruled this sector for 3,000 years. Every intelligent species knows our borders. You are either lying or you are too primitive to deserve the stars." James tried to stay calm. "We mean no offense. We can withdraw from disputed systems and establish clear boundaries. There is no need for conflict." Another council member, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish, spoke up. "Humans are young. Too young. You achieved faster-than-light travel only 80 years ago. Species that advance so quickly are dangerous. They take risks. They make mistakes. They start wars. We don't want war," James said firmly. "We want peace." Kreltok leaned forward, his 4 hands pressing against the table. "Then you will withdraw from all 47 colonies. You will return to your home system. You will pay tribute to the Dominion for the next 100 years. These are our terms." James felt his heart sink. Those terms were impossible. Millions of humans lived in those colonies. They had spent decades building them. And tribute? Earth would never accept becoming a subject state to aliens they had just met. "I need to consult with my government," James said. "You have 30 standard days," Kreltok replied. "If you do not begin withdrawing by then, we will remove you ourselves." The meeting ended. James returned to his ship and sent an urgent message to Earth. He explained everything, including his assessment. The Zathari would not negotiate. They saw humanity as weak, as children playing with technology they did not understand. War was coming unless Earth surrendered. Then came the attack. 5 days after the meeting, 3 human research stations were destroyed. They were small facilities, housing only 4,000 people each. Scientists, engineers, families. The Zathari warships appeared without warning and fired. There was no declaration of war, no final chance to surrender. Just death. 12,000 people died in less than an hour. The videos reached Earth within days. James watched them in his quarters, feeling sick. The stations had sent desperate messages as the attacks began. Parents screaming for their children, scientists begging for mercy, and then silence. The United Earth government went into emergency session. James was not there, but he received reports. Some leaders wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight even if humanity lost. The debate lasted for hours. Then Admiral Victoria Chen spoke. James had met her once, years ago. She was a career military officer, someone who had spent her entire life preparing for threats that might never come. She was in her 60s now, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. "The Zathari believe we are weak," Chen said to the council. "They believe we will run or kneel. They are about to learn something about humanity. We don't run. We don't kneel. We fight." The decision was made. Earth would not surrender, but Earth also did not respond to the Zathari ultimatum. The days passed in silence. James remained at the council station, watching and waiting. The Zathari seemed pleased with themselves. They believed human silence meant fear. On day 15, Kreltok summoned James again. The magistrate was in a good mood, his skin showing bright colors that the translator said meant satisfaction. "Your government is wise to consider our terms carefully," Kreltok said. "Perhaps humans are not as foolish as we thought. Will you withdraw?" James looked at the alien leader for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "We are considering all options," James said. Kreltok seemed confused by the response, but he dismissed James without further discussion. Outside the chamber, James allowed himself a moment of relief. He had received a coded message from Earth just that morning. 4 words: stand by. Fleet coming. The final days passed slowly. The Zathari gathered more ships near the human border. Their fleet grew to 600 warships. They sent messages to all their allied species boasting about how they would teach the upstart humans a lesson. Some of the messages were intercepted by human intelligence. James read them and felt cold anger. The Zathari were going to invade. They would destroy colonies, kill civilians, and enslave any survivors. This was not going to be a limited war. This was extermination. On day 29, James stood in the observation deck again, watching the Zathari fleet prepare to move. They were organizing into attack formations, ready to jump into human space. In just hours, the invasion would begin. Then space rippled. James had seen faster-than-light jumps before, but never like this. Reality seemed to tear open in dozens of places simultaneously. Light bent and twisted, and through those tears came ships, human ships. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, sleek hulls of gray and black, covered in weapons that humans had designed over decades of preparation. 150 warships emerged in perfect formation, with Admiral Victoria Chen's flagship at the center. The Zathari fleet scrambled to respond, confused by the sudden appearance. James watched their communications light up with panicked messages. They had not expected this. They had not expected humans to fight back at all, and certainly not with such a force. Admiral Chen's voice came over all frequencies, calm and cold. "This is Admiral Victoria Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You attacked our civilians. You threatened our homes. That was a mistake. Leave now or face the consequences." Kreltok's response was filled with rage. "You dare threaten us? We outnumber you 4-1. You will be destroyed." Chen's reply was simple. "Then come and try." The Zathari fleet moved forward, confident in their numbers. James gripped the railing of the observation deck, his heart pounding. The battle was about to begin, and the future of humanity hung in the balance. The first shots came from the Zathari fleet. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space, bright purple streaks that moved at the speed of light. They struck the human ships, and for a moment James thought it was over. But the human vessels held. Their shields flared with white light, absorbing the impacts. Some beams got through, scorching hull armor, but no ships exploded. Then the humans fired back. What happened next would be talked about for centuries. The human warships unleashed weapons that the Zathari had never seen before. From the front of each vessel, metal slugs launched at incredible speeds. They were simple in concept, just chunks of dense metal accelerated by magnetic rails. But they moved at a significant fraction of light speed, and when they hit hard. 3 Zathari cruisers exploded in the first volley. The slugs punched through their shields like they were not even there, tore through the hulls and detonated the power cores inside. Brilliant explosions lit up the darkness of space. The Zathari fleet hesitated. This was not supposed to happen. They outnumbered the humans. They had superior numbers. But those railgun rounds were devastating. Magistrate Kreltok screamed orders from his flagship. "All vessels, advance. Overwhelm them with numbers. They cannot possibly have enough ammunition." The Zathari armada surged forward. 600 ships against 150. The math should have been simple, but mathematics did not account for human ingenuity. As the Zathari closed the distance, the human ships launched missiles. Thousands of them, more than seemed possible from such a small fleet. The missiles spread out in complex patterns, their engines burning bright blue. The Zathari tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. The first wave of missiles reached the Zathari formation and detonated. These were not normal explosives. These were nuclear warheads enhanced with human engineering. Each explosion released a burst of X-rays focused into deadly beams by the warhead's design. The radiation cut through Zathari shields and hulls, frying electronics and killing crew members in seconds. 40 more Zathari ships went dark in the first minute of combat. James watched from the council station, barely breathing. The battle was beautiful and horrifying. Space was filled with explosions, weapons fire, and dying ships. The human fleet moved with perfect coordination, each ship knowing exactly where the others were and what they were doing. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications channel again. All vessels execute pattern Delta 7. Target their command ships. The human fleet split into 3 groups. One group continued to engage the main Zathari force, keeping them busy. The second group circled around, using their superior speed to flank the enemy. The third group, led by Chen's flagship, drove straight toward the center of the Zathari formation where Magistrate Kreltok commanded from his massive dreadnought. The Zathari tried to reform their lines, but the humans were too fast. Human warships used something the aliens had never encountered: advanced combat computers that could think and react faster than any organic being. Every shot was calculated for maximum efficiency. Every maneuver was optimized. The humans fought like a single organism with many bodies. Kreltok realized too late what was happening. "They are targeting me!" "All ships, protect the flagship!" But it was already too late. Chen's group launched a new weapon, something that made even James gasp in shock. Small pods shot out from the human ships, accelerating at speeds that would kill any unprotected organic being. These were boarding pods, and they were aimed directly at the Zathari flagship. The pods were too small and fast for the Zathari point defense systems to track effectively. Most got through. They slammed into the hull of Kreltok's dreadnought and began cutting through the armor with plasma torches. Inside those pods were human marines. The Zathari had soldiers too, warriors from a dozen different species who had trained for decades, but they had never fought humans in close combat. The marines that poured out of the boarding pods wore powered armor that made them faster and stronger than any Zathari warrior. Their weapons fired explosive rounds that could punch through walls. The fighting inside Kreltok's ship was brutal. The Zathari defenders tried to hold their positions, but the humans moved through the corridors like unstoppable machines. Their armor let them survive in vacuum, walk through fire, and shrug off weapons that would kill unprotected humans. Within an hour, human marines had captured the flagship's bridge. Kreltok found himself staring at a human soldier, a young woman whose face was visible through her helmet's transparent faceplate. She held a weapon pointed directly at him. "Surrender," she said in perfect Zathari, translated by her suit's computer. Kreltok's 4 hands trembled. This was impossible. His species had ruled this sector for millennia. They were superior. They were dominant. How could these young upstarts defeat them so easily? "We outnumber you," Kreltok said weakly. The Marine tilted her head. Not anymore, she was right. The battle had turned into a massacre. The Zathari fleet was breaking apart. Some ships tried to flee, jumping to faster-than-light speeds to escape. Others continued to fight, but their formations were shattered. The human fleet moved through them like a blade through water, precise and deadly. Admiral Chen gave the order to cease fire once it was clear the battle was won. The remaining Zathari ships were allowed to retreat. Of the 600 warships that had attacked, only 220 escaped. The rest were destroyed or disabled, drifting in space as lifeless hulks. The human fleet had lost 23 ships, 23 against nearly 400 enemy vessels destroyed. The ratio was staggering. James received a message from Chen requesting his presence aboard her flagship. He took a shuttle across the debris field, seeing the scope of the destruction up close. Zathari bodies floated in the void, frozen and lifeless. Pieces of ships drifted past. It was sobering. The flagship's docking bay was busy with activity. Marines were returning from boarding actions. Engineers were assessing damage. Medical teams were treating the wounded. James made his way to the bridge where Admiral Chen stood studying holographic displays. Chen looked tired but satisfied. She turned when James entered and nodded in greeting. "Ambassador," she said, "thank you for keeping the diplomatic channels open. Your work gave us time to arrive." James looked around the bridge. "I did not know we had a fleet like this. I thought Earth's military was much smaller." Chen smiled slightly. "What you saw today was the first expeditionary fleet. It was formed 30 years ago when we first achieved faster-than-light travel. We have been preparing for this kind of encounter ever since." "Preparing?" James asked. "Humanity has a long history of war," Chen explained. "We learned hard lessons over thousands of years. One of those lessons is simple: hope for peace but prepare for war. When we reached the stars, we knew we might not be alone. We knew other species might be hostile, so we prepared." James looked at the displays showing the battle aftermath. "You were not just prepared. You were overwhelming." Chen nodded. "We designed our weapons based on human physics and engineering. The Zathari had advanced technology, but it was optimized for their style of warfare. They use energy weapons and strong shields. We use kinetic weapons that their shields cannot stop effectively. They fight in formations. We use distributed network combat. They rely on individual skill. We use artificial intelligence to enhance our capabilities." "What happens now?" James asked. Chen's expression grew serious. "Now we see if they want to negotiate or if they want to continue this war. We will hold position here and wait for their response. But Ambassador, I want you to understand something important." "What is that?" "This fleet, the first expeditionary fleet, is not Earth's only military force. We have been building for decades. What the Zathari saw today was just the beginning of what humanity can field if necessary." James felt a chill run down his spine. "How many ships does Earth have?" Chen looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Enough, let's leave it at that for now. The Zathari do not need to know our full strength. Let them think this was everything we had. It might make them more willing to talk." Over the next week, the Zathari Council sent urgent messages. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted peace. Magistrate Kreltok, now a prisoner aboard the human flagship, sent a personal message to his government begging them to accept whatever terms humanity offered. James read the intercepted communications with interest. The Zathari were terrified. Their intelligence analysts were trying to figure out how many ships humanity possessed. Their estimates ranged from 200 to 500 total vessels. They assumed the first fleet represented the majority of Earth's military capability. They were wrong, but they did not know that yet. 2 months after the battle, a Zathari delegation arrived at Earth. They came in a diplomatic vessel, unarmed and broadcasting peaceful intentions. James met them at the orbital station above Earth, the same station where humans had first achieved a permanent presence in space. The Zathari diplomats were nervous. They kept looking at the ships in orbit, counting them, trying to assess human strength. James noticed but said nothing. The negotiations began, and James could barely believe what he was hearing. The Zathari were offering everything. They would recognize all human colonies. They would establish clear borders. 5 months had passed since the battle. In the grand chambers of the Zathari High Council, the mood was almost cheerful. The 12-member species gathered to celebrate what they called their strategic victory. Musicians played traditional songs. Food and drink flowed freely. Leaders gave speeches about wisdom and survival. Magistrate Kreltok stood before the assembly, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of triumph. His skin showed bright colors of joy and pride. The defeat that had nearly broken him months ago now seemed like ancient history. "We have learned valuable lessons," Kreltok announced to the crowd. "The humans are strong, yes, stronger than we anticipated, but they are not invincible. We saw their fleet. We studied their tactics. We know their capabilities now." A council member from the insect-like Vraxi species clicked her mandibles in agreement. "Our intelligence reports confirm it. The humans fielded 150 warships. After the battle, they lost 23 vessels. That leaves them with 127 functional warships. We, meanwhile, still have thousands of ships across our territory." Another counselor, a floating being from the Kelesh species, added his thoughts. "The humans fought well because we underestimated them. That will not happen again. Our analysts have studied their weapons. We can design countermeasures. We can build shields that resist their kinetic weapons. We can develop faster ships to match their mobility. Kreltok nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. The humans showed us everything they have. One fleet, one strategy. We lost the battle because we were unprepared. But now we know what we face. We can adapt. We can overcome. The Council approved a massive military buildup. 3,000 new warships would be constructed over the next 5 years. Research programs would focus on countering human technology. Training would emphasize the aggressive, networked combat style that humans preferred. The Zathari Dominion would emerge stronger than ever. We will not attack immediately, Kreltok explained. We will show the humans that we accept peace. We will trade with them, communicate with them, and let them believe we are satisfied with the current borders. And then when we are ready, when we have overwhelming force, we will end the human threat permanently. The council erupted in cheers. They raised drinks to their wisdom, to their patience, to their inevitable victory. In their minds, they had narrowly escaped disaster by making peace. Now they had time to prepare properly. The humans would never see the next attack coming. What the Zathari did not know was that every word of their celebration was being recorded. Far above the council chambers, in the cold darkness of space, a small human spy satellite drifted silently. It was no larger than a human fist, covered in stealth materials that made it nearly invisible to scanners. Its quantum-encrypted transmitter sent everything back to Earth in real time. On Earth, in a secure facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Victoria Chen watched the Zathari celebration with cold eyes. She sat in a command center filled with displays showing ship positions, intelligence reports, and strategic assessments. Around her, dozens of officers monitored the situation. They think they know our capabilities, Chen said quietly to her second-in-command, Commander Sarah Mbeki. They think one fleet is all we have. Mbeki smiled grimly. Should we correct their misunderstanding, Admiral? Chen shook her head. Not yet. Let them build their 3,000 ships. Let them waste resources preparing for a fight against 150 vessels. Meanwhile, we continue our schedule. She touched a control on her console and a new display appeared. It showed the current status of Earth's military forces. The numbers would have terrified the Zathari if they could see them. First Expeditionary Fleet, 127 ships, repairs ongoing. Second Fleet, 240 vessels, active and deployed. Third Fleet, 220 vessels, active and deployed. Fourth Fleet, 210 vessels active and deployed. The list continued. Fifth Fleet, Sixth Fleet, Seventh Fleet, each one larger and better equipped than the first fleet that had fought the Zathari. The newer fleets incorporated lessons learned from the battle, with improved weapons, stronger hulls, and more advanced computer systems. In total, Earth currently had 11 fully operational fleets comprising over 2,500 warships. And that was not all. In shipyards throughout the solar system, in automated facilities built into asteroids and moons, construction continued on dozens more fleets. The Zathari analyzed the first fleet's technology, Chen said, pulling up another report. They studied the wreckage. They examined our railgun rounds and missile designs. They are so proud of themselves for learning our secrets. But the first fleet uses 30-year-old technology, Mbeki noted. Exactly, Chen replied. We sent them our oldest ships. We wanted to see how they would respond, what tactics they would use, what weapons they possessed. It was a test and they failed completely. Now we know everything about them and they know nothing about us. Chen stood and walked to a large holographic display showing the galaxy. Human colonies glowed blue. Zathari territory showed in red. The border between them looked tense but stable. The Zathari think they are being clever, Chen said. They plan to wait 5 years, build their fleet, and then attack when they have overwhelming numbers. 3,000 ships against what they think is our maximum force of 150. In their minds, it is a guarantee of victory. Do we let them build those ships? Mbeki asked. Chen considered the question. Yes, let them waste their resources. Let them feel confident. Because when they finally attack, we will show them what humanity is really capable of. She touched the display, zooming in on Earth's solar system. The view showed massive industrial facilities. Automated factories on the moon churned out ship components. Asteroid mining operations fed raw materials to orbital shipyards. Fusion reactors provided unlimited power. The entire solar system had been transformed into a military-industrial complex over the past 80 years. This was humanity's secret. While the Zathari had grown comfortable with their dominance, becoming slow and complacent, humans had prepared for the worst. Every government on Earth had contributed. Every resource had been mobilized. The lesson of human history was clear. The universe might be dangerous, so be ready for anything. How many ships can we produce per year? Becky asked. At current capacity, approximately 300 vessels annually, Chen replied. We can increase that to 500 per year if we activate the reserve shipyards. And our technology improves constantly. The ships we build today are significantly better than the first fleet. Becky whistled softly. The Zathari have no idea what they are facing. No, they do not, Chen agreed. And we will not tell them. Let them think they are clever. Let them think they have time. When they attack in 5 years, they will bring 3,000 ships, and we will show them 10 fleets, each one more powerful than anything they have ever seen. Back in Zathari space, the celebration continued. Leaders gave more speeches. Intelligence officers presented their findings. Military commanders showed designs for new weapons meant to counter human technology. A young Zathari analyst named Trevkor stood before the council with a holographic presentation. She was nervous but determined to share her findings. Honored council members, Trevkor began, I have completed the analysis of human industrial capacity based on our surveillance of their home system. Tell us good news, Kreltok said, slightly drunk from the celebration. Tell us the humans are already at maximum production. Trevkor hesitated. The data is unusual, Magistrate. We detected massive industrial facilities throughout their solar system, shipyards, factories, mining operations. The scale is enormous, far beyond what a species their age should possess. The council chamber grew quiet. This was not the news they wanted to hear. What are you saying? Kreltok demanded, his skin shifting to darker colors. I am saying that human industrial capacity exceeds our initial estimates, Trevkor explained carefully. However, there is good news. We have monitored their ship movements for months. We have identified their fleet positions. And we have only ever detected one fleet, the first expeditionary fleet that fought us. This suggests that despite their industrial capacity, they have chosen to build only a limited military force. Kreltok relaxed, his colors brightening again. So they have factories, but they are not using them for military production. Typical of young species. They prefer commerce and growth over defense. That is one interpretation, Trevkor said carefully. She wanted to say more, to express her doubts, but she could see the council did not want to hear warnings. They wanted to hear confirmation of their beliefs. Any other interpretation? Kreltok asked sharply. Trevkor chose her words carefully. It is possible they are hiding additional fleets. However, we have surveillance in multiple systems. We have intelligence assets monitoring human activities. If they had more ships, we would have seen them by now. The council accepted this explanation eagerly. It fit their narrative. The humans had industrial capacity but were peaceful by nature. They had built one fleet for defense and nothing more. The battle had been their maximum effort, and they had barely won. As the celebration resumed, Trevkor quietly left the chamber. She returned to her office and looked at the data again. The emergency session of the Zathari High Council was nothing like the celebration 3 months earlier. The grand chamber, usually filled with music and laughter, now held only tense silence. Magistrate Kreltok stood before the assembled leaders, his skin a dull gray color that showed fear and shame. Show them, Kreltok said quietly to his intelligence officer. The holographic display activated, showing the scout ship's recordings. Every council member watched as human fleets appeared one after another. 10 massive formations, each one comprising hundreds of warships. The numbers on the screen climbed higher and higher. This cannot be real, the Vraxi counselor said, her mandibles clicking nervously. It must be a trick. Sensor ghosts. Holographic projections. Trevkor, the young analyst who had tried to warn them, stepped forward. We confirmed the data through 3 separate scout ships. We also detected their engine signatures, their power outputs, and their hull compositions. These are real ships, counselor. All of them. The Kelesh counselor's floating form dimmed with distress. How did we miss this? We have been monitoring human space for months. How did they hide an entire armada from us? They did not hide them, Trevkor explained. We simply were not looking properly. Our surveillance focused on the first expeditionary fleet because we assumed that was their only military force. These other fleets have been deployed throughout human space for months, possibly years. They were always there. We just never looked for them. Kreltalk's forearms hung at his sides. He looked older than he had 3 months ago, broken by the realization of his mistake. We thought we were clever. We thought we understood them. We believed one fleet was their maximum capability because that is what we wanted to believe. A silence fell over the chamber. Every counselor understood what this meant. The Zathari had been planning to attack humanity with 3,000 ships in 5 years. They had thought that number would be overwhelming. But now they knew the humans already had at least 10 fleets, which meant over 2,000 warships at minimum. And if the humans could hide 10 fleets, how many more did they have? "We need more information," the Vraxi counselor said. "Send more scouts. Find out their exact numbers. We must know what we are dealing with." Over the next week, the Zathari sent dozens of scout ships to observe human space. They used their most advanced stealth technology, their best sensors, and their most experienced crews. What they found made the situation even worse. The human fleets were not just numerous. They were advanced. Each fleet was newer than the first expeditionary fleet, with better weapons and stronger hulls. The Zathari scouts observed training exercises where human ships performed maneuvers that seemed impossible. They watched as human vessels coordinated perfectly across vast distances, moving as one organism. Even more troubling was the industrial capacity the scouts detected. The human home system was covered in shipyards. Automated factories worked around the clock. Mining operations stripped asteroids for raw materials. The scale was staggering. The humans could build hundreds of ships per year if they wanted to. Trevkor compiled all the data into a comprehensive report. She presented it to the council with trembling hands, knowing the news would be devastating. "Based on our observations," she began, "we estimate humanity currently possesses between 2,000 and 3,000 warships across 11 confirmed fleets. However, this may not be their total strength. We have detected multiple shipyards that appear to be building additional vessels. If they maintain current production rates, they could add another 300 ships per year." The council chamber was silent. The numbers were impossible to process. The Zathari Dominion, which had ruled this sector for 3 millennia, had approximately 2,000 warships spread across their entire territory. The humans, a species barely a century into space travel, had matched or exceeded that number. "There is more," Trevkor continued reluctantly. "Analysis of the first expeditionary fleet's technology suggests it was outdated, even when it fought us. The ships were at least 30 years old. The newer fleets use improved designs. Their weapons are more powerful, their defenses are stronger, and their coordination systems are more sophisticated." Kreltalk made a sound like a groan. "We studied the first fleet's technology. We designed countermeasures. We thought we could defend against their weapons. Those countermeasures may be ineffective against their newer ships," Trevkor confirmed. "The humans deliberately sent us old technology to study. They wanted us to waste time and resources preparing for weapons they no longer use." The realization hit the council like a physical blow. The humans had outsmarted them at every turn. The Zathari had celebrated their narrow escape, while the humans quietly deployed overwhelming force. The Zathari had planned revenge while the humans prepared for any eventuality. The Zathari had underestimated humanity not once but twice. "What do we do?" the Kelesh counselor asked quietly. "We cannot win a war against such a force." "We negotiate," Kreltalk said firmly. "We offer them everything they want. Territory, technology, trade rights, anything. We make peace and we never threaten them again." But the Zathari military commanders had other ideas. General Scarth, commander of the Dominion's largest battle fleet, stood up to address the council. "With respect, Magistrate, I disagree," Scarth said. His species was reptilian, covered in thick scales, and his voice was a deep growl. "Yes, the humans are stronger than we thought. But they are still young. They lack experience. We have fought wars for thousands of years. We know strategy and tactics that they have never encountered." Kreltalk shook his head. "Did you not hear the report? They have more ships than us. Better ships. And they have been preparing for this since they first reached the stars." "I heard the report," Scarth replied, "but numbers are not everything. We have 3,000 new warships under construction. If we accelerate production, we can have them ready in 2 years instead of 5. We strike before the humans build more fleets. We hit them with everything we have all at once before they can fully deploy their forces." Several council members murmured in agreement. The idea of attacking now before humanity grew even stronger had appeal. At least it was action rather than surrender. Trevcore stepped forward again, her voice urgent. General, I must object. We do not know their full strength. What if they have more fleets we have not detected? What if those shipyards are building even larger forces? An attack now could be suicide. Scarth dismissed her concerns with a wave of his clawed hand. We cannot live in fear of what might exist. We must act on what we know. We know they have 11 fleets. We know their deployment patterns. We can calculate attack vectors that will overwhelm their defensive positions. The debate continued for hours. Some council members wanted peace at any cost. Others wanted to fight while they still had a chance. Eventually, Scarth's aggressive stance won out. The council voted to accelerate military production and prepare for a massive assault on human space. Kreltok, outvoted and overruled, could only watch as his worst fears came true. The Zathari Dominion was going to war with humanity, and he knew in his heart that it would end in disaster. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Chen watched the Zathari preparations with interest. Human intelligence had penetrated every level of Zathari government. Every council meeting was monitored. Every military communication was intercepted. Chen knew about the 3,000 ships under construction. She knew about General Scarth's war plans. She knew everything. They are going to attack, Commander Mbeki said, standing beside Chen in the command center. Intelligence predicts they will be ready in 18 to 20 months. Chen nodded slowly. Let them come. We will be ready. She pulled up a display showing human fleet deployments. The 11 active fleets were positioned at strategic points throughout human space, forming a defensive perimeter that would be nearly impossible to breach. But Chen was not content with defense. Begin Phase 2 deployments, she ordered. I want 2nd through 11th fleets fully positioned within 60 days. First Fleet can return to Earth for refit and repair. What about the Zathari preparations? Mbeki asked. Should we launch a preemptive strike? We could destroy their shipyards before they finish those 3,000 ships. Chen shook her head. No, let them build. Let them gather their forces. When they attack, I want them to bring everything they have. Every ship. Every weapon. Their maximum effort, why? Becky asked, confused. Chen smiled grimly. Because when we defeat their maximum effort with minimal losses, every species in this sector of the galaxy will understand one simple fact. Do not threaten humanity. The lesson will be written in Zathari ships floating dead in space. She touched another control and a new display appeared. It showed additional fleets, ones not included in the 11 active formations. These were reserve forces, training fleets, and newly completed vessels awaiting assignment. When they attack, Chen continued, they will bring 3,000 ships against what they think is our full strength of 11 fleets. We will meet them with 7th Fleet alone. Mbecky's eyes widened. 1 fleet against 3,000 ships? 7th Fleet is our newest, Chen explained. The most advanced ships, the best crews, the latest weapons and defensive systems. 20 months after the first battle, the Zathari Armada gathered at the edge of human space. 3,000 warships filled the void, the largest military force the Dominion had ever assembled. General Scarth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet organize into attack formation. His reptilian features showed satisfaction. This time would be different. All vessels report ready, his tactical officer announced. We await your command, General. Scarth bared his teeth in what his species considered a smile. The humans are waiting for us. They know we are coming, but they cannot stop us. We have 3,000 ships against their 11 fleets. Even if each human vessel is superior to ours, we have the numbers to win. What Scarth did not know was that Admiral Chen had been watching his preparations for months. Every communication, every ship movement, every tactical plan had been intercepted and analyzed. Chen sat in her command center on Earth, studying the holographic display that showed the Zathari Armada. They are in position, Commander Mbeki reported. Intelligence suggests they will attack within the hour. Chen nodded calmly. Signal 7th Fleet. They have operational command. All other fleets are to hold position unless I give direct orders. Mbeki hesitated. Admiral, are you certain 1 fleet will be enough? We are about to find out, Chen replied. If I am wrong, reinforcements can arrive within minutes. But I do not believe I am wrong. She opened a communication channel to Admiral David Zhao, commander of 7th Fleet. Zhao was younger than Chen, in his 40s, but he had trained his entire adult life for this moment. His fleet consisted of 312 warships, each one built within the last 5 years using the most advanced technology humanity could produce. Admiral Zhao, Chen said formally, you are authorized to engage enemy forces. Rules of engagement are defensive only until they cross into human territory. Once they attack, you have full authority to respond as needed. Zhao's face on the screen showed determination. Understood, Admiral. 7th Fleet will not let you down. At the border of human space, Zhao's fleet waited in perfect formation. The ships hung in the void like sharks waiting for prey, their sensors locked on the approaching Zathari armada. On the bridge of his flagship, the Unconquered, Zhao watched the enemy fleet advance. They are moving, his sensor officer reported. 3,000 vessels, multiple ship classes, advancing in a wall formation. Zhao studied their approach. The Zathari had learned from their first battle. Instead of charging forward in a loose formation, they advanced slowly and carefully, maintaining tight coordination. They had also improved their shielding and armor based on captured human technology, but that captured technology was 30 years old. What Zhao commanded was cutting edge. All ships weapons-free once they cross the border, Zhao ordered. Target their command vessels first. I want their leadership eliminated in the opening salvo. The Zathari armada crossed into human space with General Scarth giving the attack order. All vessels fire at will. Overwhelm their defenses. 3,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma bolts, and missile swarms filled space with deadly light. The barrage was impressive. Enough firepower to destroy a planet. It struck 7th Fleet's defensive perimeter, and for a moment, it seemed like the human ships would be overwhelmed. But 7th Fleet held. Their shields were not like the 1st Fleet's shields. These were new designs using principles of physics that the Zathari had not encountered. The shields did not try to stop the incoming fire entirely. Instead, they bent and redirected it, causing the energy to dissipate harmlessly into space. Only a fraction of the Zathari weapons got through, and those that did struck armor so dense and resilient that they left only scorch marks. Then the humans returned fire. 7th Fleet's weapons made the 1st Fleet's arsenal look primitive. Each ship carried railguns that fired rounds at speeds approaching 90% of light speed. The projectiles were made of exotic materials that could punch through any known shield or armor. When they hit, they released their kinetic energy in devastating explosions. The first volley destroyed 80 Zathari vessels. Just 80 shots, perfectly aimed, perfectly timed. 80 ships became clouds of debris and frozen corpses. Scarth watched in horror as his leading elements vanished from his tactical display. All ships advance. Close the distance. They cannot maintain that rate of fire. But 7th Fleet's rate of fire was terrifying. The railguns could fire every 12 seconds, and each fleet had over 300 ships. Every 12 seconds, another wave of destruction tore through the Zathari formation. The humans also deployed new missile technology. These were not simple nuclear warheads. These were antimatter torpedoes, each one containing a tiny amount of the most destructive substance in the universe. When they detonated, matter and antimatter annihilated each other, releasing energy that made nuclear weapons look like firecrackers. Scarth's fleet began to break apart. Ships exploded or went dark, their systems fried by radiation. Formations dissolved as captains tried desperately to avoid the human weapons. Some ships attempted to retreat, but the human vessels were faster, able to pursue and destroy fleeing targets. We need reinforcements, Scarth's communication officer shouted. Request all available ships from the reserves. There are no reserves, Scarth roared back. This is everything we have. 3,000 ships. Zhao watched the battle with clinical precision. His tactical computer tracked every enemy vessel, predicted their movements, and assigned targets to each human ship. The coordination was perfect. A symphony of destruction conducted by artificial intelligence working in harmony with human commanders. They are trying to flank us, his tactical officer reported. Let them, Zhao replied calmly. Redirect 2nd Squadron to intercept. Show them our point defense systems. A group of Zathari ships broke away from the main formation, trying to circle around 7th Fleet's position. As they approached, the human ships activated their point defense networks. Thousands of small turrets tracked the incoming vessels and opened fire. The streams of projectiles were so dense that they looked like solid walls of metal. Nothing could survive that wall. The flanking force was shredded, torn apart by defensive fire that would have seemed impossible with older technology. On Earth, Chen watched the battle through real-time feeds. The fight had been going for 3 hours. Of the 3,000 Zathari ships that had attacked, fewer than 800 remained functional. 7th Fleet had lost only 19 vessels, and most of those were damaged rather than destroyed. "Should we send reinforcements?" Mbeki asked. Chen shook her head. "Not yet. Cao has this under control." She was right. Zhao pressed his advantage, ordering his fleet to advance into the heart of the Zathari formation. It was a bold move, aggressive and dangerous, but the human ships were so superior that they could afford the risk. As 7th Fleet pushed forward, they deployed boarding parties. Small attack craft launched from the larger vessels, carrying human marines in powered armor. These were not the same suits used in the first battle. These were newer models, faster and stronger, equipped with weapons that made the marines almost unstoppable. The marines boarded Zathari vessels and captured them from within. It was psychological warfare as much as military strategy. The Zathari had to watch helplessly as their ships were taken over, one by one, their crews either killed or forced to surrender. General Scarth realized the battle was lost. His proud armada, the largest force the Dominion had ever assembled, was being destroyed by a single human fleet. 300 ships against 3,000, and the 300 were winning. He opened a communication channel to Admiral Zhao, his voice hoarse with defeat. "We surrender. Please stop the attack." Zhao considered the request. His orders were clear: defend human territory and eliminate the threat. But he was also a human being capable of mercy. "Order all your ships to power down their weapons and shields," Zhao responded. "Any vessel that continues to fight will be destroyed. Any vessel that complies will be spared." The remaining Zathari ships followed the order immediately. They shut down their weapons, lowered their shields, and sat dead in space, waiting for the humans to decide their fate. The battle was over. It had lasted 8 hours. Of the 3,000 Zathari ships that attacked, 2,400 were destroyed. The remaining 600 surrendered. Human casualties: 7 ships destroyed, 74 damaged. The news spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. Every species that had been watching the situation received the same information. Humanity had defeated the Zathari's maximum effort with a single fleet. Not their entire military, just one fleet out of many. Within days, the Zathari High Council dissolved itself. The member species of the Dominion declared independence, no longer willing to follow leaders who had led them to disaster. Magistrate Kreltok resigned in disgrace. General Scarth was arrested by his own people and charged with war crimes. Trevkor, the young analyst who had tried to warn them, became the new leader of the Zathari government by default. She was one of the few officials whose reputation had not been destroyed by the war. Her first act was to send a message to Earth requesting peace negotiations. Ambassador Okonkwo returned to his role as chief diplomat.